All right, let's do it live on a Thursday edition of the program. Welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is something so much more significant. He is the great Z. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. Steeler week. We're inching closer. It's sad. We were supposed to have the first game of Week 6 tonight. We will not have that. It'll be a strange Thursday from that standpoint. Oh, down goes my surface. There, it's back.
Rally,
but
be strong.
That's what you got to do. Be resilient. Just like Kevin Stefanski says, we got to be resilient, and that's what we are here on the show. But I'm excited. We're getting closer. It feels like it feels real. We have a pretty lengthy injury report on both sides, which is you want to see both teams at full strength. I think that's always more fun, but it's going to be interesting, and we'll see how this week evolves. And obviously, the big news off the top for us is around Odell Beckham.
Yeah, absolutely. As we get into the OBM Hot Topics, Ohio Business Machine, per copy or variety of your Cleveland Browns, of all the X's and O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. As you mentioned, Odell Beckham Jr. is the news of the day, sent home today with an illness. Has not tested positive for COVID-19. We'll know the result of today's test tomorrow, so that's where you sit on that front, but was sent home. And I think that you're probably, and I think I told this story a couple of weeks ago in regard to one of my kids, you can't send them. And that's really where you're at with these players. Like if you have the sniffles, if you have anything, you can't come into this bubble. You need to stay home, and that's just the reality of the NFL in a pandemic. It's
the reality of everything. Like, for example, if your kids, as you mentioned, it's every walk of life right now. A lot of places, if you're going to enter a building, you have to take a survey beforehand that discusses potential symptoms. And if you have them, don't come, stay home, not worth the risk. And there still are other illnesses out there. There still are the normal things that would be happening in a normal year. People have been getting sick for years and years prior to COVID. And so it's just erring on the side of caution in a global pandemic.
Yeah, that's what it is. And so Odell Beckham Jr. has been sent home. And in terms of, you mentioned the other injury reports and where we stand at this point, there are numerous. The big, obviously today's practice, which is moved inside because of the inclement weather, so our team will be practicing indoors today. And that is, in normal instances, it's such an incredible luxury to have it. But, of course, it's now part weight room, too, unless that's changed since I was there the last time. But that was the weight room as well, so you don't have as much space as you normally would have to work in there.
I believe that is correct, and yes, there is not as much space. But, as we go through this, Ronnie Harrison remains in the concussion protocol. Carl Joseph was still out with the hamstring. This is all from yesterday. Landry was still out with the rib injury. Baker was limited. Jacob Phillips was out. Wyatt Teller was out. And then on the limited, you had Tay Davis return to practice. Kareem Hunt, limited thigh. Baker, chest. Larry Ogunjobi returning, limited abdomen. Sheldon Richardson, limited elbow. J.C. Treader, limited knee. Vernon, limited groin. And then you flip it over to their side. And some fairly significant ones on here. But, again, I think a lot of veterans in this year in particular are getting Wednesdays if they're at all nicked up. But from the DNP standpoint for the Steelers, guard David DeCastro, which would be a big one. Center Marquise Pouncey. A tight end Eric Ebron with a hand. Deontay Johnson, who's been knocked out of now 2 games in a row for the Steelers, out with a back injury. Juju Smith-Schuster did not practice with a knee injury. Ben Roethlisberger and Stephon Tuitt, who is off to a great start, the defensive tackle, both did not practice either, but that was not injury related. So just something to keep an eye on as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 starters on their offense all did not practice yesterday, but we'll get more information again today.
Yeah, and you, like you said, you want these teams at or near full strength or as close as can be. In regard to some of our injuries, some of them we know are precaution, hold out, get healthy injuries. The practices you really want to pay attention to are today's and tomorrow's. Those will be the 2 when you start to know if guys need to get better. Harrison's still in that concussion protocol, but that can change at any moment with him. And in terms of Baker, look, he's took a big hit. And you're going to have to take this week to get better. My hunch is certainly that he will play. And I would imagine that most of the guys that we mention, other than the ones that we consistently mention, will be ready to go, you hope, by the time you get to Sunday. Because it's a monster. It's so interesting when you talk to people and people slightly older than us and even those around our age, the amount of dislike of Pittsburgh and that franchise is just tangible, and it really is incumbent upon us as a franchise to beat them over there and take something from them. And that is, you start to feel that as we get closer and closer to this game on Sunday. I wish it was a full house over there. I think the atmosphere would be absolutely incredible. It's big for Pittsburgh too, and we'll get into the matchup. They really feel like over there, all right, who have they beaten that's a good team?
Nobody yet.
I'm waiting, right?
Right.
There isn't. They haven't beaten a really good team yet. They view us as a good team. So from that perspective, it's big for them, other than the divisional and all of that stuff. But it's big for them to prove that they can beat a good team, and we certainly are one. And you do feel the juice starting to rise for this one on Sunday.
Of course, they've got the easiest strength of schedule in the entire NFL thus far.
Yeah.
They have not played a winning team. And yes, this is the first real challenge for them in terms of a team that's accomplished something. I think a lot of people thought Houston was going to be good. Houston's 1-4 with a tough starting schedule in their defense, and it led to a coach being fired. This is, from my standpoint, this is the biggest game for the Steelers. This is the biggest game for us. Week 1, we were not up to the task with the defending AFC North champions, a team that was running it back. But this team's ability since week 1 to ramp it up, take care of business, and I think the schedule played out very well for us because we were able to just quickly turn the page from that right to a Thursday night game and have 2 back-to-back winnable games at home where we started to find our footing before we went on to Dallas and put together probably the three best quarters we've seen the Browns play in a long time, and followed up with maybe one of the best halves considering the opponent and the quality of that we've seen in a long time. We still haven't played 60 minutes. That's what's even more exciting to me, is that I think we're still very much ascending with a lot of room to grow. This will be the biggest test, though, for both of these teams.
Yep, very much so, and it's going to be a lot of fun. This is we continue, as we mentioned, talking about Odell off the top being out. The NFL has to continue, sports world in general having to deal with COVID and in respect to getting games played. We'll talk about the college stuff in a second, but the Atlanta Falcons, out of an abundance of caution now, have stepped away from their facility today. And I think the big picture-wise, I think what the Titans did on Tuesday was just a tremendous bailout's not the right word, but a tremendous affirmation to the NFL that you can do this.
Yep.
So by them playing that game on a Tuesday and playing the way that they played, it basically allows for the NFL now to say, if you don't practice, I'm sorry, we're playing.
Yep.
And if you're out some guys, I'm sorry, we're playing. They gave the Titans kind of a bye the first time around and had them literally give them a bye and move their game. Second time around, they said, you're playing on Tuesday. I'm sorry if it's a short week. The next week around, we're going to do it. The Titans responded, played well, and I think that'll be the blueprint going forward.
Yes, and again, what we have seen thus far anyway is no evidence at all of a transmission being possible team to opponent in game. And I think that's a key thing that we want to see continuing going forward. So, yeah. And by the way, we always talk about some of those phrases like yeoman's is always followed by effort. Abundance used to be a word that could be said in many different contexts. 2020, it's always followed by of caution. Always.
Of caution.
It's like abundance was a great word. Abundanza.
Really was.
Great word. Now it's always linked to of caution, and it usually has something to do with negative news. Abundance is supposed to be a plethora, a delight, more than all the prime rib in the world. I have an abundance of prime rib. Now I have an abundance of caution.
Yeah, it's a good point out of you. It actually, as a quick aside, it reminds me of the word fine. So there was a time when if you on a restaurant, it would say fine dining, which meant
really
spectacular.
Good. Yeah.
Fine dining was as good as it gets, right? But if someone asks you how you're doing, you say, I'm doing fine. It's negative.
It's usually like, what's wrong?
Right. What's wrong? You're fine. Why are you fine?
Fine's
great.
People our age are probably old enough to remember, maybe it was just a California thing, but fine was used to describe an incredibly attractive member of the opposite sex.
That's correct. Oh, she's so fine. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And now you say you're fine. My wife will be like, well, what do you think of this meal? Or that's fine. And it's like it's bad. Well, no, it's fine. It's good. It's fine.
Yeah, but fine is now like it's fine. Or if you want, if you're having a little bit of disagreement and you don't want to continue anywhere, you're like, fine.
It's fine.
Fine.
Right.
Fine.
That's right. Fine. Fine. Whatever you need.
Larry David.
It's fine.
Whatever.
But speaking of, 20 years ago today, Curb Your Enthusiasm debuted on HBO. That's a good job out of the Giant P, Gibby. and we can only thank. It's amazing what both he is able to do with it and what they have given to him, which is a blank canvas, no parameters in terms of having to deliver a seasons in any sort of timely fashion.
Right.
Just whenever you want.
Whenever.
When you have episodes, we're ready. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
We'll take
whatever
it.
you want. We mentioned in the sports world the huge news out of the conference of record, with the Big Ten being right there with it, but the Southeastern Conference. Already 2 games postponed in that league. Missouri and Vanderbilt postponed this weekend. Florida LSU postponed, and now Bama head coach Nick Saban and the Alabama athletic director both testing positive for COVID-19. So more fallout in the Southeastern Conference now. It's just going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard as these.
We have Joe Woods.
It's just very difficult to get these things in.
Yes.
It is always good to get Joe Woods in. He is at the podium right now. Let's have a listen.
If you're settled in,
Guys are both on.
questions.
All right.
All right, we are open for questions. The first question will go to Jeff Shadell.
Hey, Joe, thanks for your time here.
Yep.
When you look at Ben Roethlisberger, what do you see, and what's the best way to slow him down?
We're still working on that, slowing them down. But I've coached against Ben a few times, probably 4 or 5 times over the last 4 or 5 years. He looks the same to me. You see him throwing the ball with accuracy down the field. You see the underneath throws. He has total command of the offense. He's hard to deal with, and we're definitely going to be at our best, man, to come away with the win.
Thanks, Jeff. Scott Petrick, you have our next question.
Hey, Joe. Greedy's been placed on IR since the last time we talked to you. But I want to ask you about Terrence Mitchell, just filling in for him. What kind of luxury is that to have a guy like that who can step in and start for you and doesn't seem to miss a beat?
Yeah, it's definitely been good for us. Early on with us being here, I was familiar with Terrence just from his time in Kansas City. I remember interviewing him down at the Combine, but we really didn't know what we had in him as a player within our scheme. But, he's played well throughout the early part of the season. He really bounced back last week, really challenged the receivers outside and played a nice game. So it's definitely making it easier on me to make some calls with him over there or him out there.
Thank you, Scott. George Thomas, you're up.
Hey, Coach, I was just wondering, what do you see in that receiving core, and how much attention will you pay to Chase Claypool next week or this weekend, given what he did last week against Philly?
We are definitely paying attention to him, but they have some other weapons. That is one thing, playing against these guys that is tough. You look across the board, all the receivers, the backs, the tight ends. They have matchup concerns all over the field. So we're going to have to do a good job really executing our techniques, mixing up the coverages, but at the same time having the ability to take away a few guys if we need to.
What did Chase show you last week? What do you see in him?
Size, speed, leaping ability, hands, everything. He really was like a coming out party for him. I know he had a big play earlier in the season against Denver when you saw his speed down the sideline, long touchdown pass. But I think he's probably a pleasant surprise, maybe not even a surprise for Pittsburgh, but he's really playing at a high level right now, and he is a handful.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Nate Ulrich, you're up.
Hey, Coach, when you had the Colts backed up, did you have a feeling Miles was going to come through?
I was hoping that. That's the one thing with him, with Miles. He's just a dynamic player. Very hard to block just because of his size, length, his athletic ability. He's just very natural in terms of bending the edge. And that's one of the plays we looked at, showed the teams rush and coverage working together. Sione did a nice job in coverage. We were in position, and we made him just really hold the ball for a second, and about time for Miles to get home.
I asked Coach Stefanski this yesterday. So I'll ask you about just with Miles playing the Steelers again for the first time since last year when his season ended. If emotions run high, how well equipped do you think he is to handle that?
Yeah, it's, when I first got here, obviously with him coming out of that situation, we had a brief conversation. But since then, we've really just been focused on him being the best player he can for our team and our defense. I think he's grown from what's happened in the past. I think it's probably behind him right now. And I think he's just looking forward to getting out there and playing his best to get through this game.
Tom Withers, you're up.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, Coach. So the injuries have been bad on both sides of the ball for you guys. And Coach Van Pelt was just kind of saying it's become the theme of the year with backups having to step up. Is there a silver lining in that as a coach? I mean, we can all agree that injuries suck, but the fact that guys have to step up, and then not only when they do have to step up, they step up and succeed.
Yeah, before the season started, like we were in training camp, I don't know, in my mind, I just felt like this was going to be the season where you were going to have to play everybody. So going into it, I had that mindset. And I think it's good for us from an organizational standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, that now we have the ability to evaluate a lot of the guys on our roster, to see if they can play and make decisions on those guys moving forward. So I think it's been a benefit for our entire team.
You always want your guys as tuned up as they can be going into a game with intensity. That's what it's all about. Do you have to pull them back a little bit before a game like this, though, where, as Nate mentioned before, emotions could be running high for a lot of reasons?
Yeah, you always want to try to keep the focus when you get into these rivalry games and, everything else that goes in it. You always want to try to keep the focus on yourself, on what we can do defensively. I always tell them the only thing that's required is for them to do their job. When guys start trying to make plays outside of their responsibilities, that's when mistakes happen. So the biggest thing is that guys just relax, play hard, execute your responsibility, and that'll put us in position to play well.
Thanks, Joe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tom. Mary Kay Cabot, you're up.
Hey, Coach, I'm just wondering, in regards to Miles, it seems like, well, obviously, he's really cut down on the penalties a lot this year. He was getting roughing calls, and he was, jumping early and those kinds of things. How much of a concerted effort have you made with him to try to get him to not do that? And also, is maybe going for the ball having an impact on, the end result of some of these sacks as opposed to a flag?
Yeah, that's something that we emphasize, and I think Coach Chris Kiffin has done a great job just developing that relationship with Miles and really trying to put him in a position where he can make plays. All the things that happened to him in the past, I'm really not aware of that because it's kind of like once we got here, it's a new start for everybody. And I feel like he's really bought into the things that we're trying to teach him. I think you guys see that, on game day, just the production that he's had. So, for Miles, he's just really doing what we're asking, and we're really not talking too much about the other things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary Kay. We'll go to Scott Petrick.
Hey, Joe, speaking of injuries, what does it look like at strong safety for you?
We're good. Again, we've Coach Howard's done a good job throughout training camp, just always rotating all the guys we have in the back end, so the guys are all familiar with the defense. We have the ability to move pieces around. With Ronnie, it's really day by day with him, but I think we may get him back. We'll see. But regardless, we'll have guys that'll be ready to step up and play.
Well, two quick things on that then. How disappointing was it to see, Ronnie get the concussion, especially after the pick six, and then Andrew's ability to step over to Strong with Sheldrick coming in and, playing free? Yeah,
I didn't even know. It was like somebody came up to me and said, he's out. And I was like, for what? Because he was standing right behind me like a minute before. And then they told me what happened. It really, I think, happened maybe a few plays before that. So, the biggest concern for us is really his health and just getting him healthy. We'd love to have him on the field, but it's more important for him to be at his best. But just one of them freak things. He made a great play, and all of a sudden he's out. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Nate Ork, you're up.
I was going to ask you about safeties too, but I'm obviously waiting to see with Ronnie. But if he's back and with Sheldrick there, do those guys earn more playing time with those interceptions? Huge plays in the game.
I think we have the ability to do that. If things work out, we'll just have to evaluate where he's at with the game plan, just in terms of executing it and his comfort level, because we don't want to put him in a situation he's not ready for. So we feel fine moving forward with Sheldrick. He showed playmaking ability since we put him in the game. He was telling me, I've been here before. I was like, I know, I've been here too. But he went in and he proved it. So we feel fine with Sheldrick, if Ronnie can't make it.
We'll go to Dan Lobby next.
Hey, Coach. With Miles in the strip sacks, I know you guys drill that stuff in practice, but for some guys, does it just come more naturally? Is it just easier for some guys to do that?
Yeah, I know Mary Kay asked that earlier as well.
Oh, sorry.
But no, about the ball, I really didn't answer it. But we emphasize attacking the ball. We do drills. We keep stats on it from practice. But we do everything we can because the ball is everything. There's only one football, and we want it more than they do. That's the mindset we try to create. But I do believe some guys naturally just have the ability, guys that can get to the quarterback. They get there and they just have that knack for trying to get the ball instead of getting a big hit. You see that across the league with some guys. But right now, Miles is doing it. We're happy he's doing it. We want him to continue to do it. So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. We'll go to Scott Petrick, and this will be our last question.
Okay.
Stand by. Last question.
Everybody deals with injuries, but if the Steelers are without their two big guys on that O-line in the middle, DeCastro and Pouncey, what kind of a difference could that make?
I mean, we know that's two of their better players, but just anywhere across the league, it's always the next man up. So whoever they put in, I'm sure is capable of performing at a high level. We don't want to underestimate anybody just because somebody comes in like, oh, hey, now we got an advantage. But we've studied some of the guys we feel like may play, so we're ready to go. But our plan is really based on more on how we want to attack with what we're doing than actually who's in there.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for the time.
All right, you're up.
Let's have great practice.
All right, good stuff there from Joe Woods. We'll react to some of what he said there, including that news out of Ronnie Harrison, which is positive, nothing official, but that's some positive news there, certainly on the lean. And we will get into his defense against this Pittsburgh offense. What is the matchup? How do you create some havoc against the veteran and Ben Roethlisberger? That is coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you're injured at work, call the Workers' Compensation Lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Some good news there potentially from Coach Wood. Again, nothing official, but I did perk up with the Ronnie Harrison trending in the right direction. Of course, we don't know where he is in concussion protocol, but when the defensive coordinator talks the way that he does, it ought to put you in a pretty good mood. Still many a slip betwixt a cup and a lip, but at the very least, that was some positive news coming out of Coach Woods there.
It was, and it was both of us perked up at that one, and you want to have Ronnie Harrison out there. His speed stands out every time you watch him.
Yep.
He is a guy that seems to have a nose for the ball. He's around the ball. He's probably dropped 2 interceptions. He's made the 1 pick six, and he's an important piece of, I think, what we're going to do defensively going forward. And I think when you think about the Browns' multi-year horizon, the idea of that you have Grant Delpit returning, Harrison, and a young Sheldrick Redwine, that's a pretty good 3-man nucleus for the back end of your defense that you think about for a while going forward. So you want to see him out there. I think he's added something to this defense. You're going to need it today, on Sunday, against a very good Pittsburgh offense. But yeah, that was the best news there. And then the other part of good news is that Larry Ogunjobi has returned to practice this week, and you should have your defensive front back against an offensive line of the Steelers that could be a little bit banged up. David DeCastro's only played in 2 games, tried to give it a go last week, only lasted 22 snaps, did not practice again. And Marquise Pouncey could not finish last week's game against Philly and ended up being, against Philly for DeCastro and ended up DeCastro last played against Houston, didn't play against Philly. Their weeks are all messed up in the way that they write the things out because of when the games were supposed to be and then when they're not.
I know.
So
you're doing great.
And then Pouncey couldn't. Pouncey couldn't finish.
Straight.
Pouncey couldn't finish last week.
You're never going to do a good school talking like this.
Nerd.
SAT.
Disrespecting Emory, nerd. So anyway. Those 2 guys being out would be big, and they've lost their starting right tackle, the guy who won the job, our good friend Zach Banner, in week number 1. So it could be potentially 3 of the 5 that you see on Sunday might not be the 3 of the 5 who open the season as starters for this Steelers offensive line.
Yeah, so some significant, obviously, there in terms of what you're going to be going up against. In terms of, I think that we are far more equipped and prepared to take on their offense than they are to take on our defense and our They have not played teams similar to us. I think of the Cowboys' firepower similar to this Pittsburgh firepower. In fact, ratcheted up even to this Pittsburgh firepower. But we have seen teams like this who can throw it all over the place and do it with great effectiveness. But this is, as we get into the matchup, and you pointed this out earlier in the week, they are going about it in a different way than traditionally what you think of when you think of Pittsburgh in the throw game.
Yeah, and for Ben Roethlisberger, what you typically think of is a guy who's going to hold the ball, make plays, and really beat you that way. This year he's only 4 of 18 on passes down the field of more than 20 yards, and that's atypical for Ben Roethlisberger. He's usually a very good deep ball player, but a lot of the time that breaks down, and he's one of the quarterbacks that when you would go through, you'd go through those kind of stats of, well, how long do they have it in the pocket? He was always one of those to have it in the pocket a long time. Roethlisberger this year thriving in the quick passing game, but struggling when he has to hold on to the ball. And I find this to be, for Ben in particular, this is new for him. This is not something that he is. It's typically the case. So I'll go into the Pro Football Focus stats, and I think this is really important. This is going to tell a lot of the tale. And I think when Joe Woods, you think about how you want to try to match up with them, and they're very talented. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster. They have 4 receivers that are talented players. But what he is doing right now is he really is getting the ball out quickly. 2.37 seconds to throw. That is the fastest in the NFL. His quarterback rating when he gets the ball out quickly is in the high 100s. And he's having the best quarterback rating of his career through this point. 110. He's never been this good through 4 games. 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's playing at a level that for Ben Roethlisberger is very much an elite level. And he's a guy who's been elite for a long time, but he's doing it, as we mentioned, in different ways. The lack of downfield passing, but just the efficiency. Get it out. Low air yards. He's in the bottom quartile in the league in terms of air yards per target, but it doesn't matter because he's getting the ball out so efficiently and effectively and completing the highest percentage of his career that he's nickel and diming you. And as soon as he's the guy, though, that as soon as you think you're going to start trying to take that away, boom, Juju over the top. Boom, the burner, Deontay Johnson. Boom, Washington. Boom, Claypool. Eric Ebron, we know can do things. So it's been an interesting thing to watch the evolution of this offense, but they're also keeping him clean and having him, as I said, get that ball out quickly.
Yeah, they are, and it's interesting because when you watch them play, you would not believe that James Conner is having the type of year that he's averaging almost over 5 yards a carry, nearly 100 yards. They can hit in a lot of different ways, and they've done so with an offensive line, as you've mentioned, that is banged up. In terms of our ability to attack them, this is going to come down to the line of scrimmage, and it's going to come down to our defensive line disrupting Roethlisberger and getting home. You will see, I think, a supremely motivated Myles Garrett in this game. Not that he hasn't been already this year, but this is the game where your best players have to make plays. I think about Denzel Ward in his rookie year making the plays on the interceptions of Ben Roethlisberger here at the stadium, and you think about those are the type of plays that are going to determine this game, and your defense is going to have to play at a high level. They do have the ability. You talked about it, hitting all that stuff short. If you think about where we've been victimized, it's been deep down the middle of the field, and they've got some guys who can stretch it and make big plays that way. Claypool's emergence the last couple of weeks, I mean, even week one you could tell he was different, but last week they really leaned on him. He's just physically, we haven't seen anybody like him.
No, 6'4", he's big, he's fat, 6'5", 229, runs that 4'4", 240, so he's big and he can fly. Here's what I thought was one of the craziest stats for the Steelers team. Chase Claypool, yards per catch, 20.1. Juju Smith-Schuster, yards per catch, 9.0. Deontay Johnson, yards per catch, 9.8. James Washington, yards per catch, 9.0. So you have 9 yards, 9 yards, 9 yards, and then Claypool at 20, which is just, I think, a pretty stunning separation from everybody else. He has that 80-yard touchdown, I think it was against Denver, where they got him up that left sideline. So he's the one right now who's been that big play guy, but you can't sleep on Juju Smith-Schuster, who in some ways is having a great year, even though the stats aren't where you would want them to be. 188 catches, 188 yards through 4 games. He's caught 21 of his 24 targets and has 3 touchdowns. So they're just going like this, that, whatever. Quick out, moving the ball. They're running it effectively. Conner, 4.9 yards per carry. They've had a 100-yard rusher in 3 of their 4 games this year. This is a good offense, and they're starting to unleash it a little bit because, I was talking about that low depth of target. Listen to Roethlisberger, and you have to wonder if this is just as a result of his arm and as how things have gone. The first 2 weeks of the year, 6.6 yards was the average depth of target. The last 2, 9 yards. So I think maybe as he's back and getting stronger, they're going to continue to start pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. But he has been so good at getting it out and getting it out quickly.
Yeah, he talked about that in his availability this week. That he actually he joked, he was made light of it, but he said that it's possible that they made my arm even stronger. And you have heard that from pitchers before when they've had Tommy John, that they come back with a stronger arm. His arm looks great. It looks like he can make any throw he wants to whenever he wants to make it. If you think about what they were in the opener, where they were pretty sluggish with the Giants and weren't quite clicking, and then what we saw from them last week against Philly, they've come a long ways in a short period of time, and he's only getting better and better. This will be a big game. You mentioned Ebron and the plays he was able to make. He had 2 fumbles in the game last week that were really critical to allowing Philly to get back into it. You mentioned Claypool, 20 yards a catch. He also had 1 called back.
Yeah.
That was going to go for 40 plus. Because of an offensive pass interference. He's just a big physical guy that you're going to have to handle. Man, I'm hopeful Ronnie Harrison can play in this game. I think this would be a great Grant Delpit game. You can't even talk about that. I mean,
I know.
That type of physical athleticism is really something that would have been coveted in a game like this. What do you think Joe Woods' plan will be against Roethlisberger? We saw, obviously, Dallas went up and down the field in that game on us as they were playing catch-up. What do you think Woods will try to do against Roethlisberger on Sunday?
I think what you're going to try to do is generate pressure with your front 4. You're going to play your corners a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage and to the receivers, knowing that ball, they want to get that ball out quickly so you can be a little bit more aggressive, but you have to be wary of the ball over the top. I mean, Ebron's not a speed guy. Watching him, and that was the most I've gotten to watch him last year, his speed has significantly decreased from his Detroit days, and he's kind of a big possession receiver, but very good in that role. their home run hitters are out wide. So I think what you're going to try to do is compress the field, and you've got to try to make him throw the ball down the field. I know it sounds scary. I know that we've had problems with that, especially in the middle field, but he's 4 of 18 on passes of 20 yards or more in the air this year. He's bottom 4 in the NFL in completion percentage on 20-plus yard air throws. He is struggling there. That's where there's some rust. And so you can't let him nickel and dime you down the field. So you've got to play a little bit tighter, but you also don't want to give up the big play. So I understand if Joe Wood says, you know what, yeah, that's great and all, but let's get them into third downs. And I think critical to this is going to be our run defense, because when they're running it effectively, it opens everything else up for them. We will be the best run defense by far that they have faced this year, and getting them into more of those third and longs, that's going to be important.
Yeah, and you wonder, hopefully Mac Wilson continues to get healthier and become a big old part of that, because obviously he would factor in very key into that run defense and be able to slow down that Pittsburgh rushing attack, which has been a good one. Look, it's fun. There's a lot of fun matchups here. The other side of the ball is even more entertaining, and we will get into that into the second hour of the program here. We take a look at the Steelers defense versus our offense. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? You can get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at westhiring.com. We will go around the league coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Both on.
At Union Home Mortgage, our loan officers go into overtime to deliver a world-class mortgage experience, make you a raving fan. Find home financing options you need with the customer service you want. Visit unionhomemortgage.com to get a mortgage you'll rave about. Union Home Mortgage, promises kept. Union Home Mortgage Corp, NMLS 2229, is an equal housing lender. Before we go around the league, do you ever find yourself attached to your fantasy football players that you draft?
Yes, very
Right?
much so.
Like yeah, I had a hard time. So I was number one in my league, and and Dak went down, right? So it's done, right? I had a hard time letting him go because he'd done such a great job for me. Like, he's been such a solid performer. He was key and some instrumental in wins, and now he's gone. And then the reality of being there and now trying to find the scraps of what's left. A whole season crumbles with a man's ankle. It's a bad job.
It's very sad. Yeah, I used to
deal.
get very excited about the guys on my squad. They were my guys. Those are my guys.
They're your guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Injuries are devastating, and now you have injuries, bye weeks, COVID. It's tough.
It's very difficult. My oldest son playing his first fantasy league this year, and now is getting like kind of a lesson in the fickleness of fantasy, and that he has the number one scoring team in the league, but he's 2-3 and in 7th place. And I'm like, this will even itself out over time. It will. It's rare that if you score the most points in the league, you also don't win a lot of games. So, but he's like really upset because I'm like, this is fantasy, son. It's a little different. It's different. It's not always going to work the way you want. As we go around the league, you touched on the COVID. The Falcons, the latest team to be hit by it. Rookie Marlon Davidson tested positive yesterday, as well as an assistant coach this morning. So the Falcons facility is shut down. Again, out of, quote, an abundance of caution. This is, as you pointed out earlier, becoming the way that these things are. I think that, and we touched on this earlier, just to reiterate, look, play in the game, man. You're playing. That's what's going to happen. The Broncos were able to move back a week and play their game. The Patriots to play their game with Denver this week instead of last. You saw that they will have Gilmore and Cam Newton in that game. Obviously, they wouldn't have had them had they played last week. They're both practicing today, so you think that they'll both play in the game. I don't think the NFL will do any more of those favors, Z. I don't. I think they will say, you're going to play. Like, we've tried to do it, now we're going to play.
Yeah, because we've seen teams be able to do it and have success, and now you need to just – we always knew there were going to be tests. It's about playing through it, right? I mean, I think that's where we're at with this. If you're talking about the NFL, it's, okay, we've seen it. Let's do it. We've all got to move on, and let's go. And the funny thing about it is the biggest example of this has already happened. The New England Patriots had to play a game without Cam Newton. And that's been almost swept under because of everything else that happened. They had to do that, by the way, against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we've seen this, and that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's the reality of the situation going forward. The Falcons offense was closed. Hold on just a second. The Falcons offense was closed by them, not the league. The game Sunday with the Vikings is still on as of now. Big news from a free agency standpoint. Jeremy Fowler reporting Le'Veon Bell plans to sign with one of 3 teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, or Miami. Gibby asks which one makes the most sense. Well, one is unlike the other 2. And so, like, one would clearly be, boy, I love South Florida. It's fantastic. I'd love to play here. And it's a competitive team. Don't get me wrong. It's a competitive team in Miami. And there were reports that when he was shopping his wares around and eventually signed with the Jets, that where he wanted to be was Miami. That's, of course, where he ran into some trouble with, what do you have, a bunch of jewelry stolen or something like that down there? I think he lives there in the offseason.
Yeah.
But the other 2 are clearly contenders. I'm surprised Kansas City's in this mix. I am. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm surprised that they're in the mix.
I don't want them to be in the mix. Talked about taking my fantasy team seriously. I've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a couple of leagues, and I'd like a little more production out of him, to be honest. Had a touchdown called back due to penalty on Travis Kelce for OPI, so can't hold that against him. But, yeah, I don't want to see. The place I'd like to see him go is Buffalo. And I mean that from a football standpoint. I think that would give Josh Allen that guy in the backfield that can run, but that can also catch it, because Singletary's banged up a little bit. Moss has been missed much of the year. Who do they have catching the ball out of the backfield there? The answer is nobody.
I mean, they were playing were they playing Kenyon Drake? Or no, the other one. It was Yeldon, TJ Yeldon. I knew it was an Alabama back. It was TJ Yeldon who played for them in the game against Tennessee. So, yeah, I mean, they're grasping at straws a little bit. I was trying to think, like, when is the last time that Le'Veon Bell has been great? Is it all the way back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's 3.2 yards a carry in 19 with the Jets. He sat out 18 because of the contract dispute. He was spectacular with Pittsburgh in 16 and 17,
Right,
all-pro
that's
level
it.
player, all-pro in 2017. He was really good in 2014 too, but it's been a while since that's happened, since he's been at that level. I mean, he's a 1,300-yard rushing, 600-yard receiving guy for back-to-back years with Pittsburgh, but it's been a while since that's happened.
Yeah, 16 and that's a long time.
Yeah,
we all remember where we were 2016 and 2017. So a lot has changed, and a lot has changed for Le'Veon Bell, and that what he ended up doing, I think, you look at it as one of the big kind of misses in terms of a contract negotiation in NFL history. To be honest about it, that did not work out well for him whatsoever. He lost a year in his prime with a very good football team. He's kind of languished now 2 years with the Jets, who have moved on after 17 games he's played for them total. I think if I'm him, I'd want to go to the Bills, because I think your path to playing time is the clearest there. You're going to be on a team that's going to win the division. You can play the Jets again and beat them. Miami, as you mentioned, it would be just the appeal of the spot. The Chiefs, or maybe he doesn't want that role. Maybe he doesn't want to be a, quote, come in and have a chance to be the guy anymore. I don't know, because he wouldn't get that with the Chiefs.
That's why I brought it up. Yeah, no, he wouldn't. And I'm just wondering, what is he now? And that's what I'm saying. It's been a long time since he's been elite. It's been 3 full seasons, really, since he's been an elite player. 3 years. It's a long time. So you want to know what you're getting there with him. And I think he's also really a great example, and there's more of these, because you think of Gurley and Zeke and others, and you think about what's happening with your boy Theodore with the Panthers.
Yep.
No McCaffrey, no problem. Like, this notion of paying running backs, it's just not a smart venture to go down in this league. It's just not.
It isn't, and that's what makes it so hard, because you feel such loyalty to these guys and the allegiance to them. And for example, McCaffrey was the face of that franchise. He goes out there 3-0 with him on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
It's a position with diminishing returns. As guys get older, their production goes down, other than, some incredible superhumans like Peterson and Gore, who are still hanging on, but even they are shells of themselves now,
right,
but still had a good longevity as running backs in the National Football League. It's just a position. If your scheme is good, if you can, a lot of guys can get plugged in there and be successful. And I think that's what makes it so hard from an organizational standpoint, where you can have a guy like Nick Chubb that you love, who does everything the right way and is probably one of your favorite people in your building, but is Nick Chubb's market value, or any running back for example, their market value above what it actually should be in terms of for organization building? And so it's a very tough situation, and I hate to see it, because those guys take a bigger beating than anybody.
Yep. And the reality is from a college football level, those guys are still some of the best athletes that play college football, and there's a new crop of them every year that's introduced to the league, and so it's a never-ending supply to meet the demand. That you're never going to run out of supply to meet the demand, because of the best players, some of the best athletes still play the position, so they're always going to be ready. Dearness is a great example. He's on a fishing boat, man.
Yeah.
He had probably two of the biggest runs that we've had this season. He was on a fishing boat. I mean, that's it. It's wild, and it's something that you can see it. Certainly, Carolina, the best example of it, and I think you're going to see it with Saquon Barkley with New York. How do you make sense of it? How do you pay those guys that big money? It's sad, but it is the reality of the position. We're going to be very happy, because Eric Metcalf is going to join us next. The Browns legend will join us, talk a little reminiscing about this great rivalry, what it meant to him as a player, and what he thinks of this Browns team in 2020. Eric Metcalf up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Here for my great friends at Raising Cane's, and on game day, go for the win with Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Stack your roster with delicious hand-battered cook-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce, and huddle up with crispy crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, and buttery Texas toast. If you ask them, they'll toast both sides, kids. It's a win. Top it all off with freshly made tea and lemonade. Visit the newest Raising Cane's on Brook Park Road in North Olmsted, right behind Great Northern Mall. Many more coming in Northeast Ohio. Pay attention. Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love. It is with a great thrill that we bring on our next guest, Browns legend Eric Metcalf, joining us on the Fifth Third Money Line. And I'm wondering, Eric, thank you so much for your time today, sir. I'm wondering if you can still hear the ringing in your ears from '93. Can you still hear the stadium?
I really can, and even if I wanted to forget it, I can't because fans won't let me. And which is a good thing, you know. I mean, they really appreciated that night. So it was a special night.
I love that after that, just to kind of take everybody back to that glorious day in 1993, you said after that you feel like Joe Carter, who had just hit the big home run.
That's right.
I think that to me, and as soon as I read that, I got a huge smile over my face because that was just what a great time that is. The Browns 5-2 after that win right there, which was their best start in 16 years. This team 4-1, looking to get to 5-1, which would be their best start in a very, very long time. What was it like, though, for that to have that kind of an impact in that game?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, first of all, going into that game, I didn't even know if I was going to play because I got injured a little bit the week before in Cincinnati, so I didn't practice until Friday. That week, and we got out there Sunday, started warming up, and I told Bill, I'm fine, I'll be okay. And then went out there and got unbelievable blocking, scored 2 touchdowns. It was, as Nev Chandler said, Pandemonium Palace. And you know that's something that was special because at that time we were fighting for the division lead, and of course it was against the hated rivals in the Steelers.
Eric, you came from the University of Texas, of course, and so you're very familiar with rivalries and what they mean. The Red River Shootout, one of the great rivalries in all of college football. When you're drafted by the Browns, what is your first memories of the importance of this rivalry? How did you learn about it? How quickly did you understand its importance?
You know, when I was first drafted, I didn't really know the importance of the rivalry until the season actually got started. I mean, I held out my rookie year. I came in with a week to go in training camp, and so I wasn't there very long. Then we played the Steelers' first game and beat them 51-0. And so it wasn't that big of a deal to me until we started moving forward with the season, and you can see who was on top of the division as far as the leaders, and it was the Steelers. And so having those games, and that's when I slowly got to feel the hatred that fans on both sides felt for each other. And so, you know, and then getting older and moving on is like, it was one of those things where you think if you're going to win a division, generally you have to go through the Steelers. You have to beat the Steelers if you're going to win a division. And lo and behold, here in 2020, it's the same thing. If you want to win a division, you're going to have to beat the Steelers.
You've got to. It's something that, frankly, has not happened at their place since 2003. Psychologically, you've been in a lot of locker rooms. You know, for you, exactly. You said we came out and beat them 51-0, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But you knew what a big deal it was to everybody around. A lot of these players, they weren't a part of any of that losing in the past. What does it mean, though, to get that win in that stadium, knowing how important that rivalry is and what it means for your team to want to be a playoff team?
Oh, like you said, it's huge psychologically. I mean, I had years in 94 where we didn't beat them at all. We played them 3 times, including the playoffs, and didn't beat them at all. And so knowing how people felt about that rivalry as my rookie year, and to go in there and beat them 51 was big. I mean, I never, like I said, I didn't know what it meant to people like it did, how much it meant to people. But going in there and slowly learning what it meant, not only to the organization, but it's the fans on both sides is what made it special, because it's like a college atmosphere. It's a deep hate that both sides feel for each other, and it means that much more when it's for the division lead.
Eric, in those days when you played, and when that look, when you're on a team, you're in a bubble, right? Like you're just next game, here we go 1-0 this week, stay in that bubble, stay in it. But in those days, when you were out and about and around town and being in Cleveland as long as you did, because one thing that I've, like, it seems like there are people, including our show producer Jason Gibbs, who can't even say the word Pittsburgh. Like, did you feel that when you were here and when you played, that type of vitriol towards that town?
I did, and I still do. I have a friend, Don Sparks. We were at the Hall of Fame a few years ago, and we were with Earl Campbell and Mean Joe Green came over, and Don was willing to shake everybody's hand except Mean Joe Green because he was a Steeler. He would not do it. Like, you got all these Hall of Famers around, he won't meet Mean Joe Green, and so that's the kind of hate that I've grown to expect from Cleveland Browns fans, and I gotta appreciate it because it's something special.
Was there anybody on the Steelers that you just despised, that when you got into that rivalry, like, I can't stand this guy?
It's funny because I liked them off the field, but on the field I could not stand Greg Lloyd. And it was just because he was basically a thorn in our skin. He was terrorizing our offense. He kept us from winning big games. And so that's who I really couldn't stand when we were on the field, coupled with Kevin Green, because they were together at the same time.
Yeah, they were a handful coming off the edge. They've got kind of their modern version of that with T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree. But when you mentioned Greg Lloyd, the first thing I think of was, remember that face mask? It was, the bars were so, like, horizontally so thick. Somebody needs to bring that back. That was an intimidating look that I remember from my youth.
Right. And he wore the neck roll, didn't he? He wore a neck roll also, yep. Right? So yeah, I just didn't like looking at him because we knew it was going to be in for a tough one.
Talking to the great Eric Metcalf on the Fifth Third Money Line. Eric, for this Browns team, they're in the role very clearly, and we have to acknowledge it. They're in the role of little brother here. Pittsburgh has, you said, you've had to go. You got to go through Pittsburgh. You want to win the division. You got to go through Baltimore. That's the way that it's been for the last 2 decades. A young team that's off to a good start, that's got a formula for winning. What has impressed you about this Browns team early on this season? What have you liked? What gives you confidence that they could go into Pittsburgh on Sunday and get a win?
I like that we have a plan, and especially talking about offense, and that's to run the ball, and we're sticking with it no matter what. I mean, Indy came in, and they were supposed to have the number 1 run defense, and kept running the ball because you're going to have to do that because you can build play action and all that off of that. But what I think is important is that when you say we've been looked at as little brother, for these young guys, they don't know it as that, because they haven't been around it that long. All they know is what they've heard. They've never played where, we can't beat Pittsburgh, we can't beat Pittsburgh. So I don't think they even think about it, and that's a good thing. You get to go in the stadium. I don't know how many people they allowed in Pittsburgh, but I'm sure it's not going to be full. You get to go in the stadium in a heated rivalry for the division lead, and it's not going to be crowded. And these guys don't have a sense of what's happened in the past, only just what they've heard. They've never actually experienced it as far as playing.
Right, just like, you hadn't scored 30 more in 3 straight games since 1968. No problem. Check. We haven't been 4-1 since 1994. No problem. Check that one off of the box. Now, speaking of something that hasn't happened in a long time, I couldn't help but notice as I was looking through my Steelers media guide, Chase Claypool, the 4th player since 1990 to register at least 3 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown in a single game. Jamal Charles, Danny Woodhead, and you, sir, are the other 3 to have done that. That was in a game against the L.A. Raiders, September 20th, 1992. That had to be a pretty fun one for you.
It was. It really was. And I didn't think I was going to have a good game because I'm a very superstitious person. And when I got in the locker room, they didn't have the socks in my locker that I normally wear, the style of socks. And I was like, this is going to be a terrible game. In fact, this is real stuff. And so I had to I was trying to jimmy rig my look so I could feel like I was looking good. And then we went out there and they played so much man to man. Yeah, Ronnie Lott covered in, and so I was able to win on a bunch of those plays and score a touchdown. And I actually should have had 5 touchdowns, but Todd Philcox threw the ball behind me. On one of them, I had to turn around and catch it, and the guy got me.
So were those the socks that you went with from that point forward?
No, that was a one-timer, and I had to just roll with it. I couldn't stick with that because if it went bad, then I don't know what I would have done.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Eric, you had such an incredible career. The league was very different then. Do you ever allow yourself to imagine what your skill set would be like in this NFL where everything is so wide open?
I know what it would be like. I think, and you know, I don't even think about my skill set. I think about I would be paid like Christian McCaffrey. You know,
yep. Yes,
so
you would.
That's how I think about it because you know I look at like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, guys who run the ball and catch the ball, and don't have to come out the game these days the way the game's played because it's so spread out. You know, back in the days from Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey would probably be considered a third down back like myself. But now the way the game is so spread out, they don't have to come out the game. So they're almost every down backs, which is a great thing. So they get a lot of touches, whether it be in the running game or the passing game. And I appreciate what those guys are doing. I just think that if I played today, I would be doing some of the same things.
Well, let's not forget the year 1995 down in Atlanta, Georgia with the Falcons. June Jones, the run and shoot. You had 104 catches, 1,189 yards, 8 touchdowns. Now, the one thing I would say is they should have used you running it more. I know you guys had Ironhead Hayward, and he was tremendous. But when you think about the space that was created, still 28 carries that year, 133 yards, a touchdown on the ground, 5 yards a carry. I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. Can you remind me who your quarterback was on that great season when he had more than 1,000 yards receiving?
It was Jeff George.
That's right, my God.
Yes. It was Jeff George, and you know, and it was, and we had 3 1,000-yard receivers, we had 1,000-yard rushers, we had a 4,000-yard passer, and not to mention, we had Jamal Anderson sitting on the bench behind Ironhead.
Oh, that's right.
Jamal couldn't even get on the field at that time.
Man.
So, yeah, we had a good team. We just couldn't stop anyone when it counted.
Eric, I'll get you out of here on this one, and we thank you so much for your time.
The best.
You know, when you still go to the stadium, when we used to have full stadiums, or you still go around town, you still see an abundance of Eric Metcalf jerseys, and I know that I'm sure you get stopped anytime you're at the anytime where there's Browns fans, you get stopped. Is it something now as you've gotten some distance? How much do you appreciate your status here with this franchise and the way that the fans just adore you? They still do. It's incredible all these years.
Oh, I love it. I honestly love it. I mean, when you do something, you want to leave lasting memories. You want to feel good that when you walk away from something, you left a mark. And I feel like I've left a mark in Cleveland, and people do appreciate me, and for some reason, some unknown reason, they seem to like me around that city. But and so
they love
you.
Like
I said, it's a great time. I mean, I remember before I became a Browns legend, I used to tell Dino Lucarelli, if you guys don't put me in this legend soon, I'm going to blow this joint up. And I said that because I knew what it meant to be considered a legend in that franchise. With all the guys who've come through and done good things on the football field, and then the way that the fans adore the Browns, no matter who it is, not just legends, but everybody. And so I like the fact that I became a legend, and people in Cleveland or Browns fans throughout the world really appreciate my time in Cleveland and what I was able to do on the field.
Just while you've been on the air with us, I got a text from my buddy the Kid who said there was a dog pile in my college apartment after the second Metcalf return. I've got multiple texts from people who say they have the picture, which you tweeted out earlier this week, that iconic picture of you going down of the return from that game. People love Eric Metcalf, and you're right. 21 in the Browns is such a great number. It's a good-looking number. But when you come on this program, I would say people talk to me more about it than anybody else, and it's true. They love Eric Metcalf, and when you see him walking around the stadium, always dressed very smoothly. He's always looking dapper when he's around.
Can I tell you this?
Yes.
Can I tell you guys this? You probably don't know this, but on Twitter, people I've met since I've been retired, I know by now the total of people who were at that Pittsburgh Steelers game is well over 1 million.
That's right.
Because
everyone was there.
Was at that game. That was everyone's first round Steelers game. Everybody was at that game.
Awesome.
Eric, this was a great joy for us. So much fun, man. Thank you so much for reminiscing with us and having a little bit of fun. We appreciate you a great deal.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Wow, that was fun. That is Browns legend Eric
Metcalf.
Great job, Gibby. Calling in on the Fifth Third money line. That's a great job out of Gibby. A reminder, all guests appear on CBD via the Fifth Third money line. Fifth Third Bank making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. We'll take a look at the Browns offense against that Pittsburgh defense coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for my great friends at Weather Seal Home Services. They're your go-to for any home improvement need. And this month, take advantage of their great roof offer. For just $1 down and 7 years, 0% financing, you can get the new roof your home needs. The weather in Northeast Ohio, it's turning. Winter is coming. You know it. All the leaves falling today in my place. Don't be stuck in the cold with a leaky roof. WeatherSeal can make your new roof a reality in just 1 week. Call 877-351-SEAL or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. That sale ends at the end of this month, Halloween, October 31st. Approved credit, prior sales certainly excluded on that. Give them a call, 877-351-SEAL or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Eric that was awesome to talk to Eric Metcalf, and also one of the sneaky great players on Super Tecmo Bowl was also Eric Metcalf. He was really fun to play with on Super Tecmo Bowl.
He's great. And by the way, I really appreciate him coming to my aid when I had that. I couldn't remember that quarterback that played with him back in 1995.
Leave it to you. Here we are. Here we are. We get a Browns legend to reminisce Steelers-Browns week, and you got to somehow shoehorn Jeff George into the conversation.
First of all, it's pointing out is the year he had 1,000 yards receiving. That's pointing out one of his great statistical seasons in the National Football League.
Not for the Cleveland Browns, correct? Not for the Cleveland Browns. For the Atlanta Falcons.
We were talking about what he would do in a spread offense.
Don't even try to act like it's relevant.
It was totally relevant. What did he do in a spread offense? He had 1,000 yards receiving. That's what he did.
I think we did that. Was that after? That was your follow-up to get the Jeff George line?
That was after. Yes, that was after.
After?
Yeah, I followed the progression of the conversation. Listen, I know you don't like the fact that you put that on a tee, but you were the one who actually initiated.
My fault.
You led us
You're
there.
Right.
You took the off-ramp. You said, let's go on 85, right down to Atlanta, Georgia.
It's my fault that I asked you about football in 2020, and you went to 1994 with Jeff George.
1995
with Jeff George. Yes. That was a team of significance, certainly. It was fun. That was a good squad. This is going to be a fun game. This is going to be a fun game coming up on Sunday. And the matchup, we talked earlier in the show about the opposite, the Pittsburgh offense versus our defense. This is something else entirely. This is the one that I think everybody's so excited about. It is the strength versus strength, and it starts up front. Our offensive line, one of the best in all of football, against their defensive front and those two outside linebackers who come like their hair's on fire on every single down.
Yeah, they're good. They lead the NFL in sacks. They lead the NFL in tackles for loss. They lead the NFL in sack yards lost. And guess what? They've only played 4 games while the majority of the league, 28 other teams, have played 5. They have 4 players with 3 or more sacks on their roster. No other team in the NFL, even those who have played 5 games, have more than 2. Their nickel corner, one of their interior defensive linemen, Stephon Tuitt, both of the guys on the edge in terms of Watt and Bud Dupree. Their defense on the back end, you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick, you've got Joe Hayden, you've got Nelson, who's got 2 interceptions. Their defensive line has 2 interceptions already, which I think is another one of just the crazy stats. They've got Devin Bush, they've got Vince Williams. This is an excellent defense. They are 1 or 2 in 15 defensive categories so far this season. Most of them have to do with getting to the quarterback, pressures, hits, sacks, completion percentage allowed, passes defense, all of those types of things. But also, they are number 2 in yards per carry in the NFL. It's a defense that is talented. If you're asking me to find weaknesses in it, I've looked, I've gone through the numbers. Not many. You can run it, Bud Dupree. That's one thing, and I think we're going to really try to attack his edge. He will be playing against Jedrick Wills, and T.J. Watt will be playing against Jack Conklin. That's the way they match up. They don't switch sides. Dupree's on the right side rushing against our left tackle. Watt on the left side rushing against our right tackle. You can run at him. They have given up a few big plays. For some reason, which I think is hard to get my head around, they're tied for 28th in the NFL in third down defense, allowing 50% conversions on third downs, because you would think in that situation they would be great.
Yeah.
They're tough against the run. They're number 2 in terms of next-gen stats and negative expected value for carries. It's the Colts 1, them 2. The Browns actually 5 in that. So they're tough against the run. They're tough against the pass. They can get to the quarterback better than anybody in the NFL. They're going to blitz you. More than 50% of opponent dropbacks on first and second down are blitzed. How does that impact the play action game? How does that impact your keeper game if they're blitzing their nickel and you're trying to boot roll to that side? How do you deal with that? I don't know. And that'll be interesting to see.
I don't know, yeah.
How we deal with that going forward on Sunday. This is an excellent defense. If there's one area, their linebackers haven't been great in coverage, but they're still pretty darn good. Their corners are good. If you want to attack the middle of the field, because it's their linebackers and Hilton that have really had the toughest time in coverage for them this year, but we're nitpicking. This isn't like where there is a glaring deficiency. One guy stands out that you want to attack. There isn't that with this defense.
No, there isn't. They're very, very good. It's one of the best defenses in football. It's frightening. They're so aggressive. If there is some potentially some area where you could take advantage, if you hit it right, Jarvis and Odell healthy against their two corners. You mentioned Hilton. Joe Hayden's done a great job, but they put those corners on islands a lot. And you can, if you can stand in there and hit them, you can make plays with your receivers against their corners. But it's beyond that. Look, they're one of the best. They're one of the best defenses in all of football for a reason, and they're going to be a full day. This is a game. Boy, you wish you had Nick Chubb. We're lucky we have Kareem Hunt, because that is the antidote here. For a team that blitzes a lot, it's to run right at it, and you can do that with Dupree. You can try to. That would be the attempt. We're the best run-blocking offensive line in all of football, and I think that will allow that will allow you to get them on their heels a little bit, because if you end up chasing this game and that defense can just pin its ears back. I'm with you on the third down. It doesn't make much sense based on their talent that they're giving up that many third downs. But if you allow them to run downhill, look out. It's going to be a long night, and they can make turnovers into touchdowns in a hurry. We saw that last year with Fitzpatrick. So there's a recipe here for success. We kind of all know what it is, and it's going to be about us dictating our style to that defense.
You have got to be clean in this game, and that's turnovers, but that also relates to the pocket. And why am I saying this? Well, Baker Mayfield this year, his success has been more directly linked to the quality of his pocket than anything else. This year, Baker, when he is clean, when he's not under pressure, these are the numbers, and I think you'd like them. 68% completions on the season, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, a quarterback rating of 110. When Baker Mayfield is under pressure, and no team generates pressure at a higher rate thus far than the Steelers, but guess what? Our offensive line has been great at avoiding pressure. But when Baker Mayfield is under pressure, those numbers not nearly as good. His completion percentage falls all the way down to 42.5%. His quarterback rating falls to 30.9, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. There is a huge discrepancy in the play of our quarterback in this offense, and it's true for most quarterbacks. With no pressure and with pressure, this team generates it the best. Fortunately, our line is one of the best at preventing it. But that battle up front in the ground game and in the pass game is going to go a long way to determining the outcome of this game.
Well said on your part. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. Their customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. On the other side of this quick timeout, we'll be joined by Brooke Pryor, ESPN NFL Nation Steelers reporter. She will join us behind enemy lines coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you like to play the lottery or gamble in other ways, don't take unnecessary chances. Be sure you know the odds and what you're getting into before you bet. If you want to learn more, you can go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips, interesting quizzes, great games to help you keep gambling fun. And with that, we head behind enemy lines on the Fifth Third money line. Our great friend Brooke Pryor joining us, ESPN NFL Nation reporter on the Steelers. Brooke, thanks so much for taking the time. This one feels pretty special for us over here, with us going into this one 4-1, a 4-1 record for the first time since 1994. Steelers 4-0 for the first time in a very long time as well. What is the temperature of the room in Pittsburgh in anticipation for this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think people here are pretty excited. It's the first time they're 4-0 since 1979, so it has been a minute. But, I think where this rivalry or this game feels historically important for the Browns franchise, it feels, I think, important for the Steelers in the grand scheme of this season, because to this point, the teams that they've beaten, the Giants, the Eagles, the Broncos, the Texans, are not exactly juggernauts in their divisions. They're not. It's not like they're beating the Chiefs and the Ravens. But I think this Browns team is the hottest one they've faced so far. And with that in mind, there's a lot riding on this game, and a 5-0 start would be pretty unheard of around here. Even with all the success the Steelers have had, they've never had. It's been a while since they've had a start that would be this good.
It has been, and they've done it with some injuries on that offensive line, and I think that's when you're going against a defensive line like the Browns, led by Myles Garrett. What's the status with DeCastro and Pouncey? Are you expecting them to be able to go on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm more optimistic about Pouncey. We don't have the injury report yet for today, but it sounded like talking with Mike Tomlin earlier this week, he's more optimistic toward Pouncey playing. He's trending that way. He hurt his foot right at the end of the game. I didn't even see the injury, but DeCastro is more concerning. He has an abdominal injury, different than the knee injury he had in training camp that kept him out for most of training camp and the first 2 games of the season. I would not expect to see DeCastro on Sunday. I think something would have to drastically change. That's not necessarily worst case scenario for the Steelers, because they do have Kevin Dotson, a rookie who started for DeCastro in week 2 after they had some other injuries to Stephen Wisniewski and Zach Banner. So this offensive line has had a lot of adversity early, but they came into the season with that being one of their deepest spots, and now they're really having to go to the bottom of that depth, but it's quality depth. So I think that he should be able to hold up, but I would not expect to see David DeCastro on Sunday.
Brooke, the big question coming into this season is how would Ben Roethlisberger look? And I know we spent, even here, I can't imagine how much you guys were focused on it in the offseason, but we would see this grainy film of him throwing and go, boy, does he still have it? Does he still have it? They've changed the way they've gone about their business. He's getting rid of the ball really quick and a lot of stuff underneath, and so that's changed. But in terms of what you've seen from him physically, watching him day in and day out, what have you seen from Roethlisberger?
Well, I am grateful to be seeing him in person and not doing what you guys did and having to watch those 8 seconds of video and trying to determine if he was back just from that, because that was our entire offseason for a while. But, to me, Ben Roethlisberger looks good. No, he's not hitting the deep ball the way that he used to, but it's not that he doesn't have the arm strength. And a lot of these throws, he's overthrowing his receivers. He's missing the connection. So I think the bigger issue with him is just building that chemistry with his receivers. It's something that he's working on. He has a much different room from the one that he had briefly last year, and very different from the one he had 2 years ago, the last time he played a full season. So I think that he's just trying to build the chemistry with Chase Claypool. You see that obviously coming on very quickly with that 4-touchdown performance on Sunday. But I think that he's good. He does look 38 years old when he has to run and teams get pressure on him and he leaves the pocket. It's a little scary there from time to time, but I think that he looks better than a lot of the older quarterbacks in this league at this point, coming off of elbow surgery. And you can see that year away from the game, I think, really did help him to alleviate some of that wear and tear on his body.
How's Juju Smith-Schuster doing it? Very efficient, but not a lot of yards per catch. In fact, Claypool, we talked about, you mentioned him, 20 yards per catch. The other 3 receivers, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, all under 10 yards per catch. Do you expect Juju, as the season goes on, to get back to being more of that big-time playmaker we saw a couple years ago?
He might be, but at the same time, I think he doesn't have to be this season because you have guys like Eric Ebron and Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, James Washington. I mean, it's a sneaky deep receiver group, or at least receiving group. When you look at the makeup of it, you don't need Juju to be the guy that goes out and gets 150 yards a game or has a 1,000-yard season. He can be effective just as a decoy. Obviously, that's not what he would prefer. He would like to be getting the bulk of the targets and the catches. But to me, Ben Roethlisberger said a lot when we talked to him this week, and he said he walked into the locker room and he was a little bit worried about what situation he was walking into because Juju had a very pedestrian game, and Chase Claypool goes off, and the first thing he did was look at Juju, and Juju was smiling and laughing, and he wasn't just, putting it on, just doing it to do it, or because Chase was right there. Like, he was genuinely happy for Claypool, and he really praised his selflessness. And to me, that says Ben telling him, thank you for acting that way. Also, I'll get you your touches and your targets maybe this week or later in the season. So I think that they will try to get more to Juju, but they don't have to rely on him as much as they wanted to rely on him last year. Obviously, he didn't perform up to the standard that he did 2 years ago, but I just think that he doesn't have to do everything because they've drafted well to support him.
Brooke Pryor, our guest, she joins on the Fifth Third Money Line, ESPN, NFL Nation Steelers reporter. Let's flip it to the other side of the ball when the Browns have the ball, and obviously we are going to try to establish that run with Kareem Hunt and the offensive line, which is the best in the league when it comes to run blocking. But on the outside, there are weapons as well with Jarvis and Odell, provided they're both healthy for the game. Odell left the facility today with an illness, but provided they're both healthy, we anticipate that they will be. Where are some advantages for the Browns offensively against a Steelers defense that is, on paper, looks as good as any in the league?
I mean, the Steelers defense is really good. They're bringing so much pressure this season. They're blitzing. They're blitzing at a much higher rate than most other teams. I think any other team last time I checked. But this last week, the Eagles did find ways to exploit them. Miles Sanders took advantage of some of that blitzing and just slipped by Mike Hilton for that 74-yard touchdown run. I think that's an area that if the Steelers don't balance that pressure with stopping the run, they're going to be in trouble. And then I also look at, because they're blitzing so much and they're bringing so much pressure, they're really putting their secondary out there on an island. And Joe Hayden and Steve Nelson are good corners, but they're just taking on so much more responsibility. And I think that they're going to need help to be able to slow down Landry and Odell, assuming he plays. They're going to need some more support. And as good as Minka was at times last year, he's been a lot quieter this year. This would be a really good time for him to get an interception or get some pressure and affect the game, I think, more than he has the first couple weeks.
When you mentioned that defense, they play, cover 1, cover 3, which keeps guys on the outside on an island about 75% of the time. You mentioned Joe Hayden. Obviously, we still love him in Cleveland. Well, I'm sure he's been one of the people that's gotten out there with the media, given his roots here, because this is probably the biggest Browns-Steelers game, since he's left, in terms of the ramifications, how good the teams are, both 3 games over 500. What's Joe been saying about this matchup this week?
It's funny. We actually haven't gotten him on a Zoom call. It's, with COVID, it's a lot harder to get guys to talk. So Joe has not been available to us. We were supposed to have him last week, and he wasn't able to make it. So we actually haven't heard anything from Joe. I wish we would, because he's one of my favorite guys on the team as far as just, a happy guy all the time, a great talker. Just his personality is amazing. And I'm sure he has a lot to say. I'm sure, when we did talk to him earlier this summer, he knows the date that he was released from the Browns, and that is very much always in the back of his mind. And yes. I'm sure that that's an extra motivation with so much on the line this weekend. He's going to be thinking about that, and he's probably one of the guys in the locker room that would relish a win the most.
Yeah, certainly so. Brooke, before you started doing your job covering the Steelers for ESPN, you covered Baker at Oklahoma. And one thing about Baker that we've seen in 3 years, and I'm sure you obviously saw it at Oklahoma, was in these rivalry games, in these games where so much is expected from the fan base, and you think about his matchup with Mahomes, or certainly the Red River Shootout every time that game was played. He always historically has risen to the moment. That's something that we're waiting to see happen against Pittsburgh. Frankly, from our perspective, what did you see from Baker as a youngster at Oklahoma that made him so good in these moments?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of my all-time favorite guys to cover. Maybe that doesn't make me popular in Pittsburgh to say that, but I just really admire how competitive he gets. And you're right, he does get this extra juice when it's a big game. I mean, it wasn't the first time that I remember seeing it, but the Ohio State game when he planted the flag at the end, I mean, that's all you need to know about how he rises to the moment. And no, it seems like he hasn't done that in a rivalry game in the NFL yet, at least in the Steelers series. It doesn't mean that it's not still there. I think he's learning that it's just different. And even if you have all the want to and all the trash talk and everything else before, you still have to put that on the field. And it is harder, but, I'm sure that he's going to get to a point where he's wearing like a Pittsburgh Sucks shirt under his jersey or something like that, the way he used to wear the back-to-back Big 12 champs T-shirt when they played Oklahoma State for the conference title at the end of the year. That stuff to me is what makes him so fun and so endearing when you're a fan of that team, and what makes you absolutely hate him if you're a fan of the rival. So I think that he just brings a lot of fun to this matchup. To me, it energizes it in a really youthful way, especially when you have an older Pittsburgh team, and we're not going to see Ben trash talk the same way. He's done this enough. He doesn't need to do that anymore, but I think it's fun. I'm here for Baker bringing his attitude into this.
We are too. It'll be fun. Brooke, thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Brooke Pryor, ESPN's NFL Nation Steelers reporter on the Fifth Third Money Line. A reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so on the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a fifth third better. Still lots to come. You listen
So
to
much.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Nominations for the 2020 Helmets program are now being accepted. Zenith invites you to nominate your Ohio high school to receive $25,000 worth of new Zenith helmets. Visit the promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. That is promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. Typically at this time we've got little scores to break down.
Yes.
Even if it's bad games, you have some fantasy impact, you have something.
Got something.
Well, I think they got to stop. Don't rob Peter to pay Paul. Don't take away our Thursdays. I've gotten accustomed to them.
Flip a game back. Take a Sunday game and put it on Thursday. Especially take one of the teams that's coming off of a bye. Once you knew this was possible, you had Green Bay was on a bye. Who else was on a bye? I feel like the Lions were on a bye in week 4. Take 2 of the teams that were on byes.
And move them up.
Yeah, you had the Broncos, Lions, Packers, Patriots. For example, the Broncos and the Patriots have to play each other.
Broncos, Patriots should have played tonight.
They should have played tonight. We're idea men. We'll thrive on enthusiasm. There it is. Solution. Boom. Instead, it's at 1 o'clock. It's in the crowded 1 o'clock hour. No, you throw that on Thursday night. Broncos, Pats, Thursday night football. Let's go.
Yeah. I think they're going to I hope that they do that because what they're doing is they're putting these games in these early windows. Like we've got the doubleheader Monday again, but the first game's at 5. I mean, that's from a Fox perspective, that is not going to deliver what you need it to from a ratings perspective.
No, and that game would have done really well on Thursday. That would have been one of the best Thursday night games they would have all season.
Chiefs Bills?
Yeah.
That's right. That would have been a monster Thursday nighter. I mean, that should have been tonight. So to take that away and to replace it on a Monday at 5, it's just that's not going to have the same juice to it. It's just not.
You have to wonder.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if that was a CBS game, you wonder if they would have argued, hey, let's put that in the 4 o'clock window. Because this Sunday, all you have at 4 o'clock is Jets-Dolphins and Pats-Bucks, which is Fox, which I'm sure Fox is thrilled about. That game, everybody's going to watch the game. Nobody's going to watch Jets-Dolphins. But that game went from being one of the games of the week to being now in a very difficult, time to even watch it for half of the country, certainly.
That's a great point. I wonder why they are just going with the 2 games on Sunday late.
Because that's
that Bucks-Packers game. That Bucks-Packers game will be the highest-rated game of the season.
But isn't that what they did this past weekend, too? There were 3 games. It was Dolphins-49ers, us and the Colts, and then the main game was Giants and Cowboys. Now, we should have been the main game, but sure.
Well, right, but the Cowboys-Giants was the number 1 rated game of the weekend. But our game at least was 2, 3, and 1. Like if you're just watching Red Zone or you're casual football, you're at a sports bar. If you can go to those, those type of places, at least you have some option. 2 games, and one of them is Dolphins and Jets.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I think they would have been better off. I would have thrown the Pats, like I said, Pats-Broncos go to Thursday night.
Yep.
Slide that, and then slide this Bills-Chiefs to 4:25. But I think Fox wouldn't want to compete. Fox wants that, and that game would have been that would have been a competitive game on CBS.
Very much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I understand that part of it, but it's rare to see just 2 games in that 4 o'clock window.
So fine, just throw one to Thursday. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the other thing I would say is it's interesting when Thursday Night Football came about, and in the beginning it was a lot of, let's be honest, it was a lot of bad games early on. A lot of bad games were those Thursday night games. But now you've become accustomed to them. I've gotten used to them. I used to think, boy, do I really need Thursday Night Football? Now you kind of like it. You kind of like it leading into your Friday. It's like an extended weekend. It slides right in there, and it leads into the Friday. You become accustomed to it.
Yes.
And I do wonder if the same thing will start to happen this year if we continue to get games on Tuesdays, on Mondays at 5 o'clock. Like if you'll start to see the NFL spread its wings a little bit in the next television contract and start to open up some more days of the week.
Well, it would make sense that you could have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, right there, 4 nights, add another one on there, which would be fun. I didn't love the Tuesday, though. I think as people who get into, with fantasy, it kind of the week, it extends it a little too long.
Yeah.
That was a little rough.
Yeah, but I would take the Monday Night Football doubleheader and a Thursday nighter.
Sure.
Yeah, you just would have to find the sweet spot for that Monday night game. Like, what's the kickoff time that makes sense to where you still have, because that late game, if it's 7 and 9:30, like they do, they start the year, they go 7 and 10 or whatever. Like the 10 o'clock, I got no shot at that. The East Coast is not going to be watching the second half of that game on a Monday night. That's a tough sell. So you just have to figure out how to. You could keep. Honestly, though, you could reserve that second game for always a West Coast team.
Right.
Exactly.
You know,
1 minute.
Playing in that window. A reminder, Browns fans, tonight at 7, the Kevin Stefanski Show, presented by Howard Hanna on the University Hospitals Cleveland Browns Radio Network. Coach will join us. Money's joining us?
Money, Mitch. Money.
Oh, gosh.
Pure joy.
What a treat that'll be.
Yes.
That, of course, always is. Friday, a big show as well. Ben Hartsock will join us. He is on the call for ESPN. And Merrill Hodge will join the program as well. And Sheldrick Redwine and Score.
30.
What do you want from us, kids? Give you everything you need. Next level. Coming up next, Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.